We want to have a conversation around that. Joining me in studio right now is Maurice Odhiambo from the Civil Society Congress and Samuel Kimeu, who's the Executive Director at Transparency International Kenya. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. So, just going through the list of people who've been there. First of all, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what is wrong with this body, heading this body. I'll start with you, Samuel.
Well, thank you very much, Betty. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has an important job in this country. Mm-hmm. And it is a job that as a country, we have not been committed to getting it done.
Right.
So for the many people who have gone into this body, they have had to come out because we somehow had not aligned our energies as a country towards achieving the goal for which they were employed to achieve.
All right. So, about achieving these goals, Eliud Wabukala is probably well on his way to becoming the next chair. Do you think he has what it takes? Does the church background really give him the teeth that he needs to slay this dragon?
I think I know that there are those who are optimistic. If you had the members of parliament, there are those who came out, say, this is really just background. The fact that he served at the National Anti-Corruption Campaign Steering Committee give him the edge that he requires. I lean on the pessimistic side. It's not so much about the job. It's really about whether the country and its leadership wants to fight corruption. That is where it begins and that is where it ends. So long as we are still going to have a political elite who themselves are beneficiaries of corruption, so long as we are still going to have even these processes, if you look at the whole list, you see quite a number of these people who have held this job before seem themselves to have serious integrity questions. And every time these issues are raised, they are brushed aside.
Right.
So you see a trend where there's always a move to frustrate the fight against corruption. Either getting the wrong people to the job or not giving them the proper tools to be able to do the job.
All right.
Yep.
And it's interesting that you say that because Aaron Ringera, when he was leaving office, he said that he did not have what it took for him to fight this thing. Yeah. So what's going to be different about Eliud? And I'd also like, Samuel, for you to tell me what you think about him being the next chair.
Well, I wish him well, but it's going to be a tough job. And I have my doubts whether he has the fire in the belly to get the job done. I'll be interested to see how it transitions. From a dispensation of forgiveness and grace,
right.
which is really what the religious sector is about, to having the stick, which is what the EACC is about. I would think that it would have fitted the bill in a revamped National Anti-Corruption Campaign Steering Committee. That, in my view, he would have been more at home with that. But of course, having said that, he is taking up the job pretty soon, and we wait to see how he fares on. The challenge, of course, and Maurice has expounded it very well, is our willingness as a country to get this assignment done. And over the years, and even now, despite all the rhetoric, when you look at what is happening and break it down bit by bit, you realize that the challenges we face still continue. Remember that these eminent gentlemen who have served at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission previously were hounded out of office either by Parliament itself or through the executive working through Parliament. And that threat still remains. And it will be interesting to see how the Archbishop, the retired Archbishop, then navigates this terrain.
And I'm curious, in the first place, what could have informed this pick in the first place? Because if you take a look at the people who've been there before, you're talking about people who are politicians, a bit of technocrats here and there. For him, what would have really? Is it like we're really trying to see if anything can work? So okay, fine, we've had this kind of people, but right now let's focus on having a religious leader. Have we gotten the point of who we need to be the head of this thing, Maurice?
I think it goes back to what we've said about whether there's really commitment to fight corruption. And this is a game of musical chairs.
Right.
If you look at the two issues, again, let's just revisit those. One, because of his religious background. Two, because of his long stint at the National Anti-Corruption Steering Committee. Both these things do not lend themselves to the actual fight against corruption. And here we are not talking about telling people about corruption. That one anyone can do. We are talking about making sure that investigations are carried out properly, and that is where we always have a problem. Because every other big shot who is accused of corruption then very quickly finds a way of compromising the institution. You are looking at a situation where the public prosecutions wing then is able to get proper evidence that can sustain cases and you know, be able to take us where we want to go. Right. That never happens. So you have serious problems in terms of what the institution is really supposed to do. Now, this is cynicism. If I was just to be honest, I would say this is proper, clear cynicism. This guy is being set up to fail. Is going to be dragged through the mud. I do not see how Wabukala will fight corruption. Yeah, I know he has said very many times that he's sitting at the National Anti-Corruption. Remember that, first of all, my own view about the National Anti-Corruption Steering Committee is that it's one of those bodies that should never even have been there in the first place. Okay. It's a waste of time. The mandate of public education was actually within the EACC, within the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission before that. And there was a fight in terms of who gets the resources. It was just the games that were being played so that the OP finally succeeded in getting this body set up so that it could attract funds. So all this is just a game that is being played. And I honestly don't see where Wabukala is going. And he needs to give us a very concrete plan. The issue of dealing with the secretariat, in my view, in 1 week's time or in 2 weeks' time, he must tell us clearly how he's going to deal with the secretariat, the allegations of corruptions therein, the fact that the top leadership is completely compromised. If he doesn't give us a plan of dealing with that,
we're heading
let's start
nowhere.
Forgetting about it.
Okay, Samuel, very quickly, I'd like to hear your thoughts about, there are critics who are saying, do we even need this body in the first place? Why can't we have other institutions, say the police investigates, it goes to the DPP, and then on to court? Why do we really need this body? Do we even really need it?
Well, before I answer that question, allow me to just go back to your earlier question about what really informs this choice. And there's an important point to be made here. There is a thinking that is creeping in within the political circles that we can fight corruption through inspiration, pretty much like evangelism within religious circles. And I think this is what is informing this choice. There are people within government, despite all the evidence of the corruption that is going on, that see corruption not for what it is, but as a political gimmick. And therefore, they would want to have an approach that is more soft, more inspirational. You know, you inspire people to do the right thing. But the truth is that if you look at what needs to be done and that kind of thinking, it's very escapist, and it is actually not going to deliver us where we need to be. Whether we need this body or not, my own view and the view of Transparency International has been that we need a functional Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, or at least we need a functional body that fights corruption. There are those who've argued that it should be disbanded and that this function should revert to the police. But you ask yourself, what informed these functions being removed from the police in the first place? Have those challenges gone away? In my view, they have not gone away, and they have even deeper within the police. So if we can actually get the police to do this work and succeed, then we can also get the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to do this work and succeed. So let's use that formula that we think we have to make the police do this work successfully and make the body that is there constitutionally protected to do that work.
All right. Maurice, I mean, I want us to also have another honest conversation.
Yes.
And it's about this corruption thing. I mean, even as Kenyans, I think they've gotten used to scandal after scandal. It's even become part of our DNA as Kenyans. Do you think really there's going to be a time when we've said we've slayed this dragon and it's gone with the wind and it's completely dead? Is that even possible? Even if it's the police, even if it's the EACC that's heading this fight?
No, I think for a long time now we've come to the conclusion that you can never really have a situation where corruption is completely 100% dealt with. And that's why we normally now talk about controlling.
Controlling
so that
corruption.
you don't have high levels of corruption.
Okay.
I don't think there's a country in the world which can claim that there is completely zero corruption. We have seen, of course, situations where, because of the makeup of the country, whenever people are involved in corruption, they react to public pressure, say by resigning from their jobs. So if
that's
we
the
can
best it
reach
gets.
that kind of situation where people actually feel ashamed that I was involved in this, I cheated on mileage claims, for example, if I'm a member of parliament. Here it happens every day. People sign for mileage claims, they sign for committee meetings when they're actually out of the country. So if we can reach a place where it becomes shameful for you to be engaged in corruption, and when you are found, when it happens and you're investigated and you're found, you actually take it upon yourself to resign. You're not even told that you should resign. Secondly, if we then reach a point where investigations are successful, so that the bodies that are carrying out investigations are not always interfered with, and the chain continues. You know, from the investigations, the evidence is put before court, and you know we see the judiciary as well playing its role. So it is this sort of pillars that one has to look at. How are they working? Where are we seeing the system getting clogged? If these things can work, and we reach that point where, which I've described, where when you're involved in corruption, automatically you are ostracized. Automatically you either resign or take other actions. Then we will say, fine, we have reached a good level where we can now sustain the war against corruption.
All right, Samuel, finally I'd like to ask, there's this school of thought that there is the fights against corruption, it's happening, but to kawaida, you know, wananchi, if I bribe to get a tender, probably the law is going to catch up with me very, very soon actually than later. But the problem only comes in when you have a big shot involved, a politician or a leader in some certain level of here in society. So indeed, the fight is there, but it's to the wrong people, or it's very selective. What do you think about that?
Well, if you look at the statistics in the last 1-2 years, you can actually see that there are a number of cases that have gone to court. There are actually a number of convictions that have come out of the courts. Convictions that we can begin to look and even begin to interrogate whether the punishment that is being meted out by the courts is adequate or not. So there are quite a number of convictions that have been recorded. But overall, that is really, it's just a speck of what needs to be done. And it might be true that work is being done, and it is quite clear that there are many cases right now in the courts, perhaps more in the last 2 years than ever before, but they have not had an impact in terms of turning the fortunes against corruption. I actually do not agree that today, if you bribe, you are assured of justice.
Of justice, okay.
We still live in a country where corruption pays. And because it pays, then there are very many people, including our young people. You would recall a study that was done sometime last year, that people are willing to engage in it. And you ask the reason. The study gave also the response that young people wouldn't mind engaging in it as long as they are not caught and prosecuted. And I would like us to underline caught and prosecuted, because that is really the crux of the matter.
All right.
It's not about inspiration. It's not about evangelism. It is about punishing those who get involved. Once you punish them, everybody else will remind themselves of the basics of our ethics and values and toe the line.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Actually, the report you're referring to said that 40% of young people would vote for a certain leader if they're bribed by them.
Yeah.
So it's a problem from
Sure.
the small level to going up. All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this conversation. I was speaking to Samuel Kimeu, who's Executive Director, Transparency International, and also Maurice Odhiambo from the Civil Society Congress. All right. So we want to take